So I want to give you guys a little bit more practice with these simultaneous shifts, as well as give you a little bit of application of the supply and demand model that we've worked with for this entire chapter. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. So let's go ahead and take a look at a particular example for the burrito market. So example, and suppose that we're taking a look at the market for some particular burritos. Market for, what type of market do I want to talk about? The Chipotle or Moe's Burritos market? I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say that you guys like Chipotle better, so we'll do Chipotle. So market for Chipotle burritos. So Chipotle with their very delicious salmonella. So here, market for Chipotle burritos. And let's go ahead and assume that these are a normal good. Normal good. And now I'm going to go ahead and introduce two specific shocks, and you guys are going to have to think to yourselves, which shock is going to affect demand, which shock is going to affect supply, and then you have to tell me in which direction they're going to go. So here, suppose shock number one, I tell you that your income increases. Suppose income increases. Income increases. And shock number two, suppose that the cost of raising animals increases. So cost of raising animals also increases. So essentially here, when the cost of raising animals increases, I'm just saying that the cost of the protein, whether it be chicken, steak, pork, etc., etc. And once again, let's go ahead and assume that both of these shifts right here are going to be of equal magnitude. So here we have equal magnitude shifts. So equal magnitude shifts. So what is going to be your first step when you encounter a problem like this? First step is to go ahead and build up your supply and demand graphs. We have price, we have quantity, and then we have our initial demand curve, D0, initial supply curve, S0 right here. Starting off point, point A, this is going to tell us exactly our initial equilibrium price, which is P0, initial equilibrium quantity, which is Q0. So always starting off with your initial points, that's always going to be your starting off point. Second, it's going to go ahead and say, hey, which one of these, how are these shifts going to affect our supply? Which one of these shifts is going to affect our demand? So tackle the first shift right here, your income increases. If your income increases, is that going to affect demand or is that going to affect supply? It's going to affect a demand because it is a demand determinant. So which direction should demand shift? Your demand is going to shift to the right. It's going to increase. Why? Because we're taking a look at a normal good. Remember that anytime your income increases with a normal good, demand is going to increase. So you're going to go ahead and say, hey, demand is going to increase. I'm going to draw out my demand curve away from the origin and with D1 right there. Second, we go ahead and take a look at, put this in purple, our supply curve. So here, remember, with our shifts, one is always going to affect supply, one's always going to affect demand. Because we hit demand, we know our second shift is going to affect supply. So our goal is to figure out in which direction. So cost of raising animals increases, the cost of protein increases. How is this going to affect supply? Our supply is going to go ahead and decrease because the cost of the protein is essentially the component or a resource or input used in the burritos. So probably should have put burritos right here. So here, if the cost of the protein increases, the supply of burritos is going to decrease because the protein is a component or a resource in the burritos. So here, supply is going to decrease, and we want to go ahead and draw out in the same ratio, same equal magnitude shift, same length as our demand shift. So it's going to be somewhere over here. And this is going to be S1. With all of this, where is our new equilibrium point going to lie? What is our new equilibrium? I'll put this in gray right here. Gray. So where is our new equilibrium going to be? Our new equilibrium is going to be the intersection of S1 and D1, the curves that we just drew out. So this intersection right here, that's going to be point B. And we know for sure exactly where our equilibrium points are going to be. As we go straight across, we notice that prices are going to be much higher, but as we go straight down, we notice that quantity is going to be the same. So our new equilibrium, as we build this up, we notice that prices increase, but we also notice that quantity is indeterminate. Quantity indeterminate. And essentially, this is how you tackle simultaneous shifts. You take them one at a time and make sure that you are affecting the right curve and also hitting on the right determinant. So once again, get a lot of practice using the simultaneous shifts because we will see them throughout the rest of the semester. The last example that I'd like to go ahead and take a look at is actually a little bit of application. So we've been building up the supply and demand model, but where can we see this model being useful in the real world? So let's go ahead and take a look at a simple example with this. And suppose that we have our typical supply and demand charts. We have S0, we have D0, price, quantity, and we have point A right here. So point A, this is once again our initial price, initial quantity, P0, Q0. And suppose that we want to take a look at a particular good. So think back a few years ago in the summer of 2016, where an app or a game was released and everybody started playing with it, and time for a while was very, very nice. And what game or what app was released during this time period? If you know, it was all about Pokemon Go. So Pokemon Go. So this app right here, people went crazy about trying to catch them all, running out to the streets, getting hit by cars. Essentially here, this Pokemon Go app was released and a lot of people started playing it and went crazy for it. So do you think that this increased interest in this particular app right here, do you think that increased interest in this app would have a profound effect on the market for Pokemon goods, say specifically for Pokemon cards, which is the market we're going to be taking a look at? So yeah, probably. So because there's a huge interest in this particular app, it probably can have a huge impact on the Pokemon card market. And what do you think is going to be affected right here? What's going to be affected is probably going to be our demand because we have increased in taste and preferences. So demand should probably increase right here, go from D0 to D1 right here. And we should notice that we have an increase in the price of these Pokemon goods and also in terms of the quantity. So quantity should increase and price should increase as well. This is what our model theoretically says. But did this happen in the real world? So it's a little bit difficult for us to actually pin down quantity data because firms and corporations don't really have this data available for us to take a look at, but it's fairly easy for us to take a look at price data. So over this time period, we should see an increase in the price of these Pokemon cards. So let's go ahead and take a look at that to see if this is going to be true. The data is readily available because we do have a lot of price trackers. So there's a lot of them from Amazon, for eBay. The one that I like to use for Amazon is called Camel, primarily because it says the word camel 3 times, but this is a very useful price tracker to see whether or not you're getting a good deal on a particular good on Amazon. So what you need to do in order to use this particular site, you just go to Amazon, you search for a particular good. The one that we want to hone in on right here is this one for Pokemon cards, 100 Pokemon cards for $9.75. You just go ahead, click on the URL, you copy, and then you go ahead and paste it onto Camel, and this will give you a price history for this particular good for however long it's been selling. So for this particular good, it's been selling all the way since 2008, all the way till today's time period. And what do we notice? We notice that, hey, the price of this good has increased and decreased, and we want to see if there's a good story that matches up with the Pokemon Go app. So Pokemon Go app was released in 2016, so somewhere in the summer of 2016, which is somewhere right around this region. So before the app was released, we noticed that the price of these cards was roughly, say, $9.25. So $9.25 for 100 cards. But in the time period after the app released, what do we notice about the price of these cards? The price of these cards basically just shot up. It went from $9.25 all the way to a peak of pretty close to $22. So there were some people that were willing to pay $22 for the same exact good that was selling for $9 just a few months ago. So does the data match up with what our model says? Yes, it does. So this increased interest in the Pokemon Go app did have an impact on the Pokemon good or Pokemon card market. Of course, our model is very simplistic. It only honed in on one of the determinants, but in the real world, there are a whole bunch of other determinants that should be taken a look at. So was it just solely due to the increase in interest in the Pokemon Go app? Could it have been due to a supply issue? This is the area during Christmas time as well, so that could have profoundly had an impact on the Pokemon card industry as well. So with our model, remember, we have to keep things ceteris paribus and only focus in on one particular determinant at a time. But in the real world, there are probably a lot more other determinants that are affecting the price of this particular good. And then, of course, after this time period, what do we notice? We notice that the price of these cards fell precipitously because everyone realized that the game was terrible and they didn't want to catch them all anymore. So it's right back to its original price of nearly about $9 to $10 for the same exact good. So essentially what we have right here, this is a sort of application of the real world of our supply and demand model. And it's sort of interesting to come up with a little bit of a story behind the things that we see in application. So in terms of all of this, there is a final table that you see at the end of the slides right here, and this is just going to give you a summary of all the shifts that we've taken a look at within this particular chapter. So with one curve shifting, it's going to be fairly easy for us to see. We did it with the energy drink example. So what happens if we have an increase in supply but no change in demand? We notice that equilibrium price is going to decrease and equilibrium quantity is going to increase. So one curve shifting, that's not too big of a deal for us. Where we are a little bit interested in is with these shifts happening simultaneously. So demand and supply shifting at the same exact time. And what you see right here is going to be for the equal magnitude shifts. So the same ratio shifts. So when demand increases, when supply increases, price is going to be indeterminate, staying the same or unknown, while quantity is going to increase for sure. And we tackled this in the previous lecture. With the example that we just brought up with the Chipotle burritos, we had supply decreasing and demand increasing. So demand increasing is right here, supply is decreasing, and we see it matches up exactly with what we had in equilibrium, with our new equilibrium. Price is increasing, but quantity is indeterminate or staying the same. So once again, this is a summary table. I would highly encourage you. There are a bunch of combinations of these determinant shifts that we can take a look at, and be sure to correctly identify all of these shifts. This table would be a very, very handy resource for you guys to take a look at as you do the practice problems. So in terms of this chapter, I think this does do it for us. Yeah, so this is Alfred Marshall. He did some stuff. So in terms of chapter number 3, this does do it in terms of the big model of supply and demand. You want to focus in on the demand side of the market, the supply side of the market, combining both of them in with one another and seeing exactly what happens with our market equilibrium. With this idea of equilibrium in mind, remember that the single intersection of supply and demand was our happy little place. In our next chapter, we're going to go ahead and see exactly why this is our happy little place with a little bit of geometry and algebra to show you specifically the calculations to show why we are most efficient at equilibrium. So I'll see you guys in chapter number 4. Go ahead and take a look at the practice problems and also the assignment for this particular chapter.